that we have, which sort of guides the discussion. And if I could just, oh, we're up there, right. So if I could just refer to that presentation, which sort of sets the thing in context and is perhaps easier to comprehend. So with your permission, Chairman, PS, if I could just go through the presentation. Okay. So we start out by saying that the National Works Agency was established in 2001 and inherited the main road network as we know it today. Now, there's been lots of commentary, Chairman, PS, committee members, regarding our level of engineering and the type of roads that we build and the quality and so on and so forth. Suffice it to say that the National Works Agency has responsibility for 5,000 kilometers of main roads. And a main road is not a big road, a small road, a good road, a bad road. A main road is a road in a schedule, it's in a book. So if there's an issue with a road and somebody asks me about it, the first thing we do is refer to the main road schedule. Interestingly, if you examine the main road schedule when the NAA was formed in 2001, and you compare that main road schedule with today's main road schedule, you will find it's basically the same set of roads. The importance of that is that the NAA has built few roads. What the NAA largely does is to maintain the network that it inherited at inception. And that's an important point to observe. Now, as to whether we have done a good job or not in terms of the maintenance, that can be debated. But the notion that we build bad roads is not borne out by the facts of the situation. It may be a popular perception, but it's not borne out by the empirical evidence. Now, in terms of other roads, municipal corporations, the parish councils, they own 15,000 kilometers of roads. Ministry of Agriculture, they own about 1,500 kilometers. And then there are some 4,000 kilometers of what we call community roads, which are roads within housing developments that really have no parent, so to speak. And the reasons for that, a lot of things.
Some are in the Ministry of Housing.
Some are in the Ministry of Housing, some are just there. And a lot of the pictures that I've seen, critiquing the condition of the roads, point to roads within housing development and housing schemes that have no parent. However, we make the point that in addition to a lot of the roads being inherited in a particular condition, it again is an empirical fact that a lot of these roads were not built with drains. Now, drainage have a very noticeable and perceptible impact on the quality of the roads. If you have drains, the road will last longer. If they don't have drains, it will last not as long. It's a simple equation. And as I've said before, one very quick examination that you can do, if you drive along any road, whether in Kingston or anywhere else, and you look in the sidewalk, if you see these little grill openings, it means that the road has a drain under it. If you don't see these, it means the road doesn't have a drainage on it, and the road is the drain. And that is how it is for a lot of our roads. So the matter of drainage is not an insignificant thing. In fact, Chairman Pierce, you recall that the government did a master drainage study highlighting the drainage needs for the country. That report was tabled in 2013, and it identified the major towns and cities in Jamaica that required major drainage works, and the bill for that at the time was about $1 billion US. So if it is that the country wants to make serious inroads in terms of the drainage situation in most of our towns, it's a sizable expenditure The other point I wish to make is that if you look at our towns and townships and therefore examine the location of our roads, most of them are along the seashore, and those which are not along the seashore are along rivers. And that probably speaks to how habitation took place in Jamaica in the first instance. But we have not made a significant change in terms of relocating our towns or relocating the infrastructure. And so our roads and support infrastructure are continuously exposed to the ravages of nature. And that is why, for example, I indicated that when the South Coast Highway project was first conceived from Harborview to Port Antonio, it was all on new alignment, virgin alignment, away from the sea. And in our current plans, you would have heard of attempts to construct bypasses for Hopewell, Lucy, and not to be Port Maria. Again, this has come out of a recognition that the current location of these towns and the roads make them very susceptible to the ravages of nature, as well as they have effectively constrained the growth of these towns. So relocating a lot of these roads, so what you want to do, you want to build good roads, you want to maintain the roads in their acceptable fashion, but you also want to make the roads what we consider to be climate proof. And to a large extent, that requires significant relocation because it's tremendously expensive to maintain the infrastructure in certain locations. Right next door, we're doing revampment works along the coast here. And that's because the Kingston Harbor took out one of the lanes. And we're going to spend money and do engineering to protect that. But then in another couple of years, we'll have to revisit it because the sea eventually will win out. Continuing very quickly, in terms of the recent rains, at last count, we had about 206 roads which were impacted. And as of today, only three of those remain unopened or inaccessible. There's still one in Clarendon, which you could add to this to make 4. And the inaccessibility of the one in Clarendon has to do with the need to physically reconstruct some of the roadway. The others, well, there's a Gardentown Road, which is well known and is a major challenge. We hope to have further discussion with our parent ministry today into tomorrow so that we can sign off on a plan of action. But we are constructing a bypass to the Gardentown Road as we speak. We confess that it is not necessarily the most convenient bypass, but it is the only option that we have at this point in time. So we're busy trying to do that construction. It is, again, a fact that rain continues to fall in the area, and so the construction undertaking is extremely difficult. I just wish to make the point, Chairman, because I've gotten a lot of correspondence from agitated persons regarding when are we going to fix the Gardentown Road or this other road. May I submit that these are not undertakings that are done precipitously. The formations, we have to grab soil samples. The soil samples and the rock samples have to be taken to the lab. They have to be analyzed so that we can come up with the right engineering solution for the problem. Then we have to petition our parent ministry and the kind auspices of the PS for the funding to implement. Then we have to go to contracting. So these activities, we realize they do take time and it requires a certain amount of deliberation. It's not that we're insensitive, to the needs of the population. And we see it from a daily examination of persons coming down, some of them chancing, walking along the area. But the fact is that we have to do it right. We have to get it right the first time. As the PS indicated, our preliminary examination reveals that the total bill for the main road network is going to be somewhere in the order of about $5.5 billion, of which about half goes into initial clearance of block roadways and some initial activities to make the roads drivable. We're not pretending that we are reconstructing these roads. And we do acknowledge that the works that we're doing in the initial phase is of a temporary nature, designed largely to get people to be able to move about. The question of the permanent solution is something that we'll have to tackle as we go along. The committee specifically asked that we indicate if there was any damage to the newly constructed roads. And I submit, without fear of successful contradiction, that there was no damage to the roads that we recently built. Let me say, Chairman, that the roads that we recently built have benefited from a particular amount of expenditure which is in keeping with what we would like to spend on all of our roads. But the reality is that you can only have one Consent Spring and one Hagley Park and one Mandela and one Macfield to Ferris and one Marcus Garvey, because those roads were engineered properly, built properly, well, built using the latest engineering matrices. They have been accompanied by water supply and sewage systems as well. So we're talking about major infrastructure installation. And we're quite happy that those roads have weathered the rain, and we have all the expectation that they will continue to weather the rain in keeping with their engineering life. Financial implication. The cost to mobilize heavy equipment and personnel will continue to rise so long as the rains continue, and we have to respond to this need. Extra funding is obviously needed to repair the roadways and to expand the planned mitigation efforts. As you're aware, we do a three-cycle mitigation program: one April, May, August, September, and then November, December. And although we parochially refer to those three cycles as Easter work, back to school work, and Christmas work, in fact, they accord with the normal hydraulic cycle, because the hurricane season starts 1st of June, so you want to do your early mitigation before the onset of the hurricane. Again, statistically, the hurricane season peaks September into October. So again, you want to go into September with as pristine a drainage system as possible. And then in December, the hurricane season ends November 30. So anytime after November 30, you want to clean whatever came down during the peak. So there is a logic and a rationale to that cycle. We have been, the numbers that I'll show you indicates the amount that we have been spending on this activity over the years. Obviously, we'd like to be able to spend more. The immediate emphasis of the NAA in conjunction with our parent ministry is that we will focus on reopening the block roads, which we have been doing quite well so far. We will continue to clean the critical drains, and we will do some patching to make the roads drivable. The next slide will indicate the focus, highly trafficked roads, roads with or leading to social institutions, health facilities, etc., urban centers, and some communities. Now, most MPs here, I would imagine, would have received the Prime Minister's correspondence, all MPs, good, the Prime Minister's correspondence indicating that $1 billion had been allocated towards this effort, and specifically $7 million is to be used for patching, $4 million for debushing, $2 million for beautification, and $2 million for drain cleaning. Our interest obviously would be in the patching, the debushing, and the drain cleaning. And so, Chairman, PS, as you well know, because you set up the program, we at the NWA will coordinate with the individual members of Parliament to agree the work program, to see to the proper implementation of the program, and to ensure that the persons who work on the program do get paid at an early point in time. And let me take this opportunity to pass on what the Prime Minister has indicated to me and the PS. The banking sector is a bit concerned about having a lot of people in the banking halls on Christmas Eve and the day before and so on because of the COVID issue. And we are sensitive to that as well. So we beseech all the persons engaged in this program to undertake their works as quickly as possible so that we can process the payments as quickly as possible so that we don't have this large throng of persons, you know, at the 11th hour trying to rush to the bank for payment. So we're asking for your full cooperation in that regard. And the PS is there, and I'm here to assist you in that endeavor, okay? So that program is on. It started on Monday, and will continue. Very quickly, now, Chairman, to, you know, and there are just about 3 more slides. The question of, you know, the measures to remedy the situation and the associated costs, which we interpreted to mean, okay, every year or two we have these incidences and we respond, we react. How long can we continue to operate in this mode? And if not, what do we recommend? That, that slide there indicates what we call a road condition. And this is an international measure. Road condition survey is an internationally accepted methodology to categorize the condition of our roads. And in 1999, 48%, about half our roads were bad. In 2014, when we last did a road condition survey, that figure had gone up to 55%. The Vision 2030, prepared in 2009, states, and I will read, the lack of adequate funding for periodic maintenance in particular leads to early failure of roads, even when standard maintenance activities are carried out. The present approach to road repairs, where regular and planned maintenance is replaced by patching of failed areas that have been previously patched, is not sustainable and does not address the fundamental cause of road failure. And this is from a Govt of Jamaica document from as far back as 2009. The accepted engineering treatment for asphaltic concrete roads is indicated on the next slide. And in essence, what it says, when you build a road with all the right design criteria, you need to do preventative maintenance, because after about 7 years, you need to go in and have a major intervention. After about 14 years, you need to do rehabilitation. And after 20, 21 years, generally best practice says that you should be looking at reconstruction. Suffice it to say that we have not enjoyed that luxury in Jamaica. Now, let me strike the distinction between periodic maintenance and routine maintenance. Routine maintenance is the one that we practice most often and the one that most of us are familiar with. And that involves debushing, drain cleaning, crack sealing, patching, remarking, and replacement of traffic signs and signal. So even with the best design and constructed road, you need to carry out routine maintenance on a regular basis to get the design life. So there's no such thing as building a road, leaving it there, and everything is fine. The right thing to do is the periodic, the routine maintenance. Now, the periodic maintenance is a little bit more involved, and that involves replacing the driving surface, because the driving surface, the asphalt that you see, oxidizes after a while, and the oxidation leads to cracks. Rain then falls and gets through the cracks and gets to the base and so on and so forth. So we need to replace the asphalt on an agreed schedule, replace traffic signals, rehabilitate drainage features, rehabilitate and replace road furniture. So the two big ticket items here would be the rehabilitation of their driving surface. Hopefully your base still holds up, so you just the driving surface you need to replace, and the rehabilitation of drainage features. The master drainage study that we did and tabled in 2013 indicated that previously the design parameter for drainage, for sizing drainage, it was about 1 in 10 years, which means that the drains that were built and installed would be overtopped once every 10 years. Right now, and a lot of countries worldwide use that. Right now, in engineering parlance, people are talking about design return periods of 1 in 100 and 1 in 150. I don't want to get too technical, but how it works, you can look at rainfall pattern in Jamaica for say the last 100 years. And when you just look at just that data, you will see how many times you had rainfall exceeding a certain volume. And it is that information that we use to design. Now, 30 years ago, you could design something that, won't have any problems, once every 10 years. Now we're having bigger storms. And what that translates into is the need for larger drains. Suffice it to say that that's a tremendous, to dig up all the roads and to put in big drains and so on and so forth is a big expenditure. So let us just bear that in mind. In terms of our maintenance, our expenditure on maintenance, I've chosen the years 2015 to 2021 only because the data was very easy to mine and it has nothing to do with any particular government cycle, just the availability of the data. And you can see this is what Parliament, Chairman, this is what Parliament in its wisdom votes to us to spend. The NWA is a cost center, we don't earn our own revenue, so we spend whatever Parliament in its wisdom gives us. So for example, if you look at river training, and there's a lot of hue and cry about river training. River training has been constant at $54 million for the whole country for the whole year, for the all of that time. Clean of gullies is constant at $82 million for the whole country for the whole year. And so it goes. And these are just a recitation of what has been voted to the NWA through the parent ministry. Now, if you then flip two slides to the histogram, pardon. No, the other way. Is it? Yeah. Next one. No, that's the pie chart. Right, this one. Okay, so very quick. What this is basically a graphical representation of the table that I showed before. The blue indicates the original provision that Parliament votes, and the red indicates subsequent provision in those years. And if you look at it, you will see that the original provisions are usually small compared to the subsequent provision. And the subsequent provisions have all been made in response to incidents, rain events. So a rational conclusion from this data is that we operate more in a reactive mode than in a preventative mode. So that requires some re-examination. But I leave it to you, the August members of Parliament, to so I leave it to the wisdom of the Parliament to examine these figures and to consider appropriate measures to allow for a more proactive response to the maintenance needs. Again, if you could go back to just a description of what these things mean. Maintenance of secondary roads, island-wide disaster mitigation. It's just an explanation of how the budget is constructed and what falls under the different things. So this, again, this is just information culled from the Ministry of Finance's website. Let's look at the pie chart, which is another representation of the allocations made by Parliament for the different things. And you will see that by far island-wide mitigation exceeds the amount for maintenance of roads. And island-wide mitigation is largely our response to rain events. So we have been having this kind of response for some time. It's not a current phenomenon. And then it tells you what the other figures are. Moving along, we were also asked by the committee to comment on the road master plan. And as you are aware, the road master plan was crafted back in 2006. And that too made the following observation. It says the road network of Jamaica is deteriorating faster than it can be repaired, due in the main part to a lack of sufficient funding being allocated for both routine and periodic maintenance and reconstruction. Now, this study was done by an English company, so presumably it is void of parochial bias. That report also made a number of recommendations. It estimated that the 10-year rehabilitation reconstruction program to be undertaken, should be undertaken by the government at the time was $56 billion. That figure has increased significantly. It says additional regular funding at a minimum to carry out prioritized maintenance, strengthening of the road authorities' construction, planning, and supervision capabilities, and consideration should be given to reducing the standard and level of serviceability of our roads. Lord Chairman, this is a very important recommendation, and it speaks to a paradigm shift. The notion that we as a country, with our debt burden and our other requirements, can maintain this very extensive road network all at some fancy standard, that won't happen. I mean, the reality is that we have to accept that there ought to be differential standards for different roads in different locations. And so if you drive along a road and it is a gravel road, it's not like somebody didn't do their work while it's a gravel road. That from a strategic point of view, the state has taken the decision that that is the appropriate road for the appropriate circumstance. We have to bite the bullet and make these decisions, because there's no way we can spend $5 and get a $10 road. I mean, it won't happen. And so this was recommended, and we have no problem with that. However, it says, with bipartisan support and objective analysis of current and projected travel patterns, the development decision can be made. So that's it. I have just 2 more slides. The next one, I'm going to ask Mr. Downer to just go through very quickly financing of our roads, because the essential remit of this committee has to do with money and the budget. And so we are grateful for the opportunity to plead our case. Mr. Downer, could you just take us through this quickly?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members, PS. Just to highlight quickly that, as Mr. Hunter said earlier regarding the conditions of our road, at present, which since our last assessment, 55% of the road considered in bad condition, 30% fair and 15% good. We have looked at the cost for routinely maintaining the roads in their current conditions without upgrading them. And that will mean that to make it safe for use without upgrading those roads, the average annual cost we'll be looking at is some $200 billion. So we're talking just to keep them working and be safe to use, because it's going to mean retaining walls, etc. To upgrade our roads to good condition, as per asphaltic concrete we mentioned earlier, and to give us the required design life, we're talking about $1 trillion. So we're talking serious money. If we should get our roads in good condition, then the average annual maintenance cost would be some $80 billion to maintain them, and this is both periodic and routine maintenance. And as Mr. Hunter said earlier, after 5 or 7 years, you would need to go in and to take off the asphalt surface and to replace with the new surface, improve the drainage, etc. as you go along. And the table we have below, they show the design life. For instance, Constant Spring Road, Mandela Highway, Hagley Park, as well as the South Coast Highway for the 4 lanes that we are doing, and Junction Road have all been designed for a 20-year design life, which means that after 7 years of its completion, we would go in and replace the surface, improve the drainage system, but every year, every quarter, we will need to do routine maintenance on a normal basis. For the S-chip 2 lanes, that's actually designed for 7-year life. That's the 2-lane component of the S-chip. And just one highlight there, and that is the NAA secondary road maintenance, which is part of the narrative you saw earlier, as part of our budget. We actually carry out what we call rehabilitation of those roads, and they should give us 5 years. The problem we have many a times is that the kind of drainage improvement that is needed is not in place, and so we have these roads that are flooded every so often, and we run into problems. But by and large, that's the status of the network and the cost to get it to where we really want to. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Downer. So in concluding, the Prime Minister indicated a program of predictive maintenance, it's called a Lengthman program, which speaks to a rapid assessment of the maintenance needs of our roads in particular location, and developing a work plan from that diagnostic and then to implement. There are, in fact, Chairman, committee members, smart devices or smart technology that you can put on your dashboard. You can drive down a road and it will pick up the deficiencies. Once you then collate all those deficiencies, you can come up with a work program. So what we indicate here, and there are different levels, level 1, level 2, level 3. You can then develop a work program, and then you can implement that work program. So That, in essence, is our presentation, Chairman, committee members. What we hope to have achieved in that presentation is to impart the information specific to the recent rains, but also to put the NAA and its portfolio responsibility in a context so that there will be a greater comprehension of what needs to be done and some kind of prognostication as to the rate at which this can be done, because one is not making any assumptions that any of this can be done precipitously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Members, are there any questions that you would like to ask of the National Works Agency or the Ministry?
There is one, Chairman, but it's in relation to the budget. I know I'm pretty new, but I just wanted to find out whether the actual figures have always been budgeted or sent to the Ministry of Finance.
This year?
For the period that you mentioned in the presentation, 2015 to current, you indicated that there is a set figure that is always approved by the Ministry of Finance. But I wanted to know whether or not the actual figures that would be needed to respond by the agency have always been sent to the ministry.
That answer is yes. We always ask for more. Like what Tom said, we always ask for more. But, well, quite recently, the Ministry of Finance has indicated to us that what the ceilings are. I was told that yesterday, Jody? Yeah, so the Ministry of Finance has. I'm a practical person.
One of the good things, though, is that we work very closely with the Ministry of Finance, and even though ceilings may be set, whenever anything happens, if there's a need to, we work with them to get them to agree for environment or for any changes to be made to put us in a position to be able to respond to any given situation. So, yes, even though it may seem to be set in concrete, but we have that flexibility where we work with the Ministry of Finance when there's a need to make any appropriate adjustment to respond to any kind of situation that may come up.
One other follow-up question, Chair. In relation to our road network, I realize we have a lot of roads. Jamaica is a roaded country. Is there any thought into reviewing the networks to determine whether all the roads that we have are necessary?
Okay, good question. As I indicated, that was one of the observations and recommendations coming out of the road master plan for the country, that given our fiscal situation, it is unlikely, if not impossible, for the government to be able to maintain the entirety of the road network in, some acceptable form. And, with Jamaicans, everyone wants the A-class for everything. What that study recommends and what we certainly support is that there should be differential standards for different roads, and we sort of cut our cloth to fit our wallet. Yeah. So, yes. Beg your pardon? Yeah, it could. But again, there has to be a very candid dialogue, as I said before, with the public to say, this is the road that you're getting, and it's not that you have this road because somebody didn't come to work today to fix it or to make it into Barber Green, But this is what the country can afford at this point in time. Because as the PSO said, we have the country does have severe financial challenges, and we have to be sensible and practical in terms of how we allocate limited resource.
That's the reclassification of the roads. So maybe the reclassification could also help.
Yes, yeah.
Well, just on the I think this is more to the Permanent Secretary, budgeting. And as Mr. Hunter said about the candid conversation that needs to be had. And we do speak about the ceilings that are set, and the same amount being put into certain categories, especially to do with the NWA, and they're voting on the budget. So we constantly see $300 million coming for mitigation. But when you look at the numbers that have been given to us, right, and I would imagine that at some point the Ministry of Finance themselves, the Ministry of Economic Growth, will realize that we are spending more to react after a crisis or a flooding or whatever it is than if we had spent more in doing some mitigation work. And I go back to the chart that was presented to us, because over that 6-year period, 6 financial years coming into even this financial year, and we are not done yet, when you look at what we have spent from what was voted to the revised budget is about an additional $10 billion. And I constantly say, when we're in the House at many times, when we spend what we do in that first period, that Easter period, which is before the hurricane season starts, on drain cleaning, is just woefully inadequate. At what point do we say, and that's why I said that these committees like this sometimes, you know, we bark, but there isn't any bite at all, members, because you're seeing these figures in front of you, but I can guarantee that when the next financial year comes again, it's the same $300 million that comes for mitigation. But yet still you can present these figures to say that we are spending $10 billion more over this period in corrective measures. But if we had spent a little more at the beginning of that hurricane period, we would have probably mitigated some of the flooding that would have taken place in Falmouth or even in Chapelton or even in Mile Gully in my own constituency. Are we looking at those expenditures? I mean, to do with the river training, the desilting of rivers. I spoke about to Mr. Hunter the other day. I remember years ago, at the beginning of the hurricane season, the Chalky River used to be desilted. You know, are we looking at these historical figures to drive us to see how it is that we spend less after the fact and spend a little more before the fact so that we can mitigate against some of these floodings?
And Mr. Hunter would have responded to the question by Member Hamilton before that, yes, when we prepare the budget, we look at our historic spending in terms of river training, for example, that is, the amount is fixed. And you take that to the table with your discussions and negotiations with the Ministry of Finance. But I suppose the Ministry of Finance has to look at a bigger picture and what the resources are that are available. And for us, for example, when we have a set ceiling, as you would know, that each ministry is given a ceiling. And we can't budget outside of what the ceiling is. Only if when we come to Standing Finance Committee and we make our presentation to our ministers and the committee may deem it necessary to make representation on our behalf. It is what it is. And one of the things that finance would say is that they have to manage the situation in terms of revenue inflow. So at that particular time, this is what is available. They have to look across ministries. I recently, even some of what now we are required to spend in terms of the flood damage. Other ministries besides economic growth and job creation have been asked to look within their budgets to determine what they can forego within this financial year to allow us to respond to the situation. So yes, we do go with our figures, but at the particular time, the response has to be that finance has to manage the situation based on what their revenue inflow is. And this is why I say that the relationship that we have fostered with the Ministry of Finance is that should something happen, then we sit with them again and they are able to respond.
But
And
then I would say then, is it then time for us to look at and Mr. Hunter made mention of it at the Infrastructure Committee, at a different way of funding our roads? Because if it is that we're going to depend on central government, I know that is what the Road Maintenance Fund was originally for. But seeing the amount of road network that we have, and other countries do it, that we may have to look at a different route of funding the maintenance and, in some instances, the construction of our roadways. Because we will never, unless we borrow money to do some road maintenance of what is needed. Is the ministry looking at that as an overall? Because I did not agree, even though of the bringing of the road maintenance fund into the central coffers, because we knew that it would have gotten lost. It's just going to be a part of the funding that government gets. But then the NWA or the ministry itself is not getting any additional funds.
No, we don't.
Exactly, not getting any additional funds. So is it time to relook at that?
Well, it's a conversation that needs to be had at all levels. And we have been grappling with in terms of getting adequate funds to maintain the roads. There are lots of demands on the system. At times we would want to respond, we can't respond. And it's something that the policymakers, I believe, we should look at. I take your point, yes, that yes, it's something
I think it's due time,
we need to have that kind of conversation going forward.
Yes, because otherwise we're going to come back here year after year and asking about additional funds. Member?
Thank you, Chair. As we are talking about conversation, I don't know if the PS or Mr. Hunter will answer this question, but looking at page 13 by my own numbering of this pretty document.
Can show us the page. Okay.
Yeah. There is a 1.1 trillion that total cost to upgrade NWA road to good condition. I want to know if there has been a conversation with the Ministry of Finance as to whether or not in the future, based on the fiscal space that may occur, how long the Ministry of Finance would take to assist in ensuring that we have our road upgraded to good condition. It could be, I want to know the real, if there has been a conversation, and if it's not possible, what percentage of it is possible, if that conversation has been had. Okay, the PSSA I should take the first dive in, and if I get it wrong, then she will clean up after me. That's the tag team approach. Okay, the truth about it, the situation in Jamaica is not unique in the world. There are models all over the world where you have this point. If you recall, even in the United States, there was big haggling between the Democrats and the Republicans about an infrastructure bill, because infrastructure worldwide is a big problem. And the question, how do you finance infrastructure? who are the beneficiaries, how should you tax, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the models that we have looked at, the English model, again, it's very simple. We now know what is how many roads are in good, fair, or bad condition. You know that. We can tell you that today. The state can then make a decision that says, listen, I have 55% of my roads which are in a bad condition this year. I want to do some work that will reduce that 55% down to 30%, which means 25% would move from being bad to fair, or some percentage move to the next category. So once you take that strategic decision of migrating a number of roads from category 1 to the next category, that has a cost to it, okay? And how it works in other countries, the technocrats would do that analysis. The policymakers would say, okay, we think this program is too aggressive. Take 10 years instead of 15 years or whatever. They then go to Parliament, to their respective Parliament, and the Parliament debates it and agrees that they will fund a road rehabilitation program over a specific time period, the end of which we will have 20% roads bad, 50% good, whatever, fair. And that's debated. The bill is passed, becomes law, and that is then financed. I mean, the English does it. I was at a conference, RMF conference, PS. In the state of Texas, they did an analysis of the condition of the bridges in Texas. The technocrats, again, prescribe what needs to be done and what it will cost. They then hand that to the legislators. The legislators debate it, agree that, we can't do all of this, but we're going to do half of this, and they vote to provide the financing. And the financing is secure and can only be used for that purpose. And then you'll have some sort of independent apparatus to monitor, to make sure that what has been agreed by the Parliament is being done over time period. So, so there are models to do it. In our case, even if you come up with a new fund, you have to decide, is this tax diversion or is it tax increase? Because meaning, if it's tax diversion, mean whatever tax is going, because there is a gas tax now, but it's going someplace else. So it's either you're going to divert it to someplace else or it's a tax increase. Now, these are matters that have to be debated at your level. But suffice it to say, the model for doing these things exists, and we have fairly good. Mr. Henriquez, from his previous life, would know about some of these things too. So it's not really rocket science how to do it, but it's the policy prescription and for government to balance all the different priorities and to make the decision.
I don't know if you want the PS to come in at this time, but let me just clarify. The question is really, I thank you for the information, because seriously, I never knew that the UK had that sort of policy. But that is exactly what I'm asking. Have the conversation started with the Ministry of Finance so that the country shall know through these things coming back to Parliament to be debated and a bill to be passed?
Well, each year when we go to Ministry of Finance, we go to it with our various plans, our strategic plan, our projections for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And of course, it's usually, particularly for infrastructure works, it's usually a huge wish list. But again, the reality is that what can we afford at this particular time? So we have discussions, and I must say that finance is usually responsive to the extent that financial resources are available. So we do go, we do have the discussions, we do sit with them, sometimes for more than one day, to go through line by line, item by item, and project for the next 3 or so years. But as Mr. Hunter has said, and I had said earlier, probably we need now to look at it on a broader level in terms of when we come here and Finance Committee or otherwise, the legislators could make recommendations, because if you think that this year the priority ought to be more to be spent on mitigation and maintenance, then you would make that recommendation to Parliament and we take it from there.
And I know you know, Madam Sewell, that even when we bring it, as I have been bringing it over and over at Standing Finance, what we see in that yellow book is our sign-off that nothing is going to change. And that's why I said that we need to get to the point now, especially at these committee levels, that we can, not only that we deliberate in public like this, and we bring you here time after time during the financial year, and all we get is just great ideas, but nothing into action. And it is something that I think that just the Parliament itself has to look at and see if it is worth doing. Because, if we, just like how we have a national plan in dealing with the debt itself, we ought to have something to do with the road maintenance. That's why I said the conversation has to start. And do we have an independent fund from one of the taxes as we had with the gas tax? Do we start looking at that again and putting it aside in just even maintaining the road before we even start constructing? And I know that works hand in hand because our communities are growing, but even just the maintenance of the road. And as a country MP, I can tell you, we maintain the main roads that are more heavily traversed. But then when you go into the deeper communities, I mean, some of them are still like donkey tracks, which were roads that were built years ago without any maintenance. And it's a conversation that needs to be had urgently too. Remember.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So whilst we are looking at the wish list, I want to bring us back to reality. 2 meetings ago, the CDF meeting and the infrastructure and development meeting, the question was asked of NWA, what is their thinking on chip and spray roadway? If I would have it, Mr. Chairman, I would ask of you to ask Sir Hunter to give us their perspective on chip and spray, and then I will ask the next question.
Okay, just to repeat the representation that we had made previously, is that chip and spray is a form of road construction, but again, it has its limitation. It was intended for light traffic, relatively light traffic. So if like any engineering structure that is designed, with a what we call a design envelope. If you go outside that envelope, the engineering structure will break down. So chip and spray is designed within a certain engineering envelope, meaning the load of things should be within a certain amount. It generally requires that you have a good drainage system. So to the extent that that exists, it will work. If it doesn't exist, then the design life is going to be reduced. So what we had said then is, to the extent that you can avoid using it, we would recommend that you avoid using it, simply because the expectation of the traveling public of a chip and spray road is the same expectation they have of an asphalted concrete road. And that is it. A lot of the things that we're dealing with is expectation. And the nexus between the engineering structure and the performance of that structure sometimes goes a begging, because everyone thinks that every road can be asphalted concrete. Now, to the extent that we can afford that, then certainly you make the investment. You'll get a longer life, you get a smoother ride, and so on and so forth. But I did say before that there has to be a dialogue with the population to say this is what you're getting, and this is what you must expect of it. To illustrate my point, member, I was in the city of Houston, Texas 3 years ago, visiting relatives. Here's Houston in Texas, which is one of the richest states in the United States. And I'm driving around, and all over the place there are signs that say, when the water level passes this mark, turn around. In other words, they have taken the decision that they cannot make the city flood-proof. And they make no pretense about that. And they're saying 98% of the time you can drive on this road, but there's going to be a 2% of the time when you turn back. So what that does, it establishes the performance of their system with the expectation of the people. And so we still stick with our original prescription that to the extent that funds are available and you want asphalted concrete experience, you make that investment. But if all you have is the money to afford chip and spray, you can do it with the caveats in terms of the performance. So that was our position.
Thank you. Is it that it is a form of road rehabilitation that you practice as NWA?
We no longer do, because our roads, follow me now, carefully, step by step, our portfolio is the main road network. And the presumption with the main road network is that it is more heavily trafficked. It will carry vehicles with greater weight, and therefore the maintenance obligation that would come with chip and spray would be disproportionate to the cost.
The reason, Mr. Chairman, that I'm going in this direction is that on Tuesday last, we at CDF had a discussion as to the better movement of whichever. And chip and spray came into the discussion. And we had NWA, Mr. Storage, presented here and giving a report to say that they do not practice. But then there is an argument that has developed in other sphere wherein the member is saying that, why is it that you are not using it? Yet on a road in St. Elizabeth, Corby Road, that it is the same NWA that is doing the work, and it is chip and spray. So I'm asking the question because I made a decision, or my recommendation was based on the information provided by a technical person from NWA. But then it was brought to my information that there is, even though they say that they are not doing it and they don't advise that it is being done, there is a road, Corby Road, in southeast St. Elizabeth that is being done by NWA, and it is the type chip and spray work that is being done. So,
okay, so
before you answer though, Mr. Hunter, let member just do a follow up.
I am the. Is this okay?
Yeah, man, we're hearing you.
I am the member of parliament that is affected by.
Now pull down your mask so that we can hear you a little.
I am the MP that is affected by that decision from the CDF committee. And I was very disappointed that that decision was taken in terms of the road that I proposed for repair through the parish council using chip and spray. I was advised that the committee was advised by NWA not to use that material anymore. But when I listened to Mr. Hunter, he's saying something different, because he said in his presentation that they are trying to move away from that, especially on the main roads. But if the funding cannot give you the asphalted concrete that you have, then you can go to chip and spray if the application is correct. No reference were made to roads that were damaged in other constituency. I'm saying that it could well have been damaged as a result of the rains and whatever, and because it was chip and spray. But what Mr. Hunter is saying to us, it depends on the application. And therefore, I was happy that Member Clark would have raised it, because the Carby Road is not a main road. It's a parish council road. And it is being done by through the NWA.
Well, it would affect other agencies like RADA.
And it is being, and it is chip and spray that is being used. And that project is a project which...
Mr. Chairman, may I just jump in?
Mr. Hunter just answered.
Yes.
So again, everything has its context, and I don't want the conversation to go outside the context that we have established. I mean, some years ago, Mr. Downer took me to a location in Portland that was cut off by a landslide, and they had to use helicopter to carry relief to the person. And when I went up there, I said to Mr. Downer that this place should just have a gravel road, because, you know, it is largely forested. There are exactly 7 people living up there. And so for the state to build, I mean, asphalted concrete road, that's what we're talking about. When I mentioned that in the master road plan, the road master plan, Mr. Witter, coming out of 2006, the conclusion was that the country cannot sustain the current network believing that everything is going to be asphalted concrete. And so from a policy point of view, it recommended that the government bites the bullet and come up with what's called differential standard. Now, where the problem is the expectation that goes with it. And that's what I said before. Remember, some years ago, I was associated with an initiative at the time to convert squatter settlements into good settlements. And we came to the conclusion that it's not something you can do with one go. There has to be an incremental improvement as you go along. And so a whole set of what we call interim standards were developed, and they're resident in the Ministry of Housing. So again, we are not, Mr. Witter, at different points. We're saying that when you buy a $5 chip and spray road, you should not expect to get a $10 asphalted concrete road performance.
And I agree with you.
Yeah, and so we're not different. We're saying from the NWA's point of view, because of the generous contribution from the PS, we build roads at a certain minimum standard when we get money from the ministry. Now, we do undertake...
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order.
Yes.
The matter is not what you do.
Okay.
The matter at hand is the misinformation that was given to the committee for the decision to be taken the way it was taken, so that it puts Southeast St. Elizabeth at a disadvantage. And what I am saying, I was led to believe, because NWA is the national technocrat or team of technocrats that we rely on
for construction
to make certain decisions. Yeah. So it is not what you have to do with whatever little you have to do. It's the fact that we were told that no, we do not recommend it. Yet the argument is skewed in a different way now that there is a road that is being done by the same NWA, and they're using that same form of rehabilitation. That is the issue.
So, Mr. Clark, you're an attorney, so you know the benefit of evidence. Mr. Witter mentioned that Mr. Witter mentioned that that the NWA was doing work on a parish council road. Now, again, that I would have to see, because the NAA does work on parish council under very specific circumstance. It is not a normal part of our portfolio. You know that, and I know that.
Mr. Hunter, hold on. Let me jump in, because, you know, I think what the issue at hand is really that before the committee made a decision like that, some reference should have been made to the National Works Agency.
There was.
Right?
There was.
Yeah, but so the question is, yes, the municipal councils themselves do roads themselves, yeah? But would have to do it at a standard that is basically a guideline from the National Works Agency. I'm asking.
No.
There's no guideline in constructing roads? No. So is there a national, is there a guideline in constructing roads?
No. Not for parish councils, no.
So what are the standards that they use then?
They have their own standards. They have their own standards. Yeah. Right. And they, yeah.
No.
And there's nothing, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mr. Chairman.
They have their own standards.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing wrong with that.
The estimates that were provided came from the parish council, from the superintendent of roads and works. He justified everything. But yet, the decision was taken to turn down the project as a result of the information that they got from NWA.
And the double surface is a method that is used by the parochial councils.
Yes.
So, I mean,
most of the parish roads are done by double surface dressing, because they don't have the money to do asphalted concrete. None of them. None of the parish council. Except maybe for the
that's a discussion that needs to be had at this.
So, Chairman, all I was saying is that...
I saw it and I didn't see what the rationale was. Really.
Just want to make sure that the context is well established. And the context in which we speak is that what we do, we don't do double surface dressing. So that's fact number one. Secondly, in terms of whether or not we would recommend the use of double surface dressing by somebody else, we would say you can use it, but here are the caveats. And that decision as to whether to accept it with the caveats reside with the investor. Simple, just like everything else.
And the implementing agency.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's not a decision without caveats. And it's very important that the caveats be understood. Because oftentimes, Mr. Clark, what we find is that we make a $5 investment, but we expect a $10 performance. So the nexus between the value of the investment, or the cost of the investment, and the value of the product is missing.
Mr. Chairman, I understand clearly what the CEO is saying to us today. What I am fighting with is the fact that here is something that you don't practice. You don't advise that it is to be done. But other agencies can do it, because that is how their funding will help them. What I'm saying is that we were given information to the negative. Yet, even if it is a parish council who asks NAA to do that piece of road in Corby, that they, NAA, would have gone and do the same thing that they said they don't practice. I think that I would say to the parish council, it's better you do it than me, because it is something that I don't know. It's like asking the Sabbath to eat a piece of pork.
But
that's not our business.
Remember, who is doing the construction on the road? Who is doing the construction on the road?
The construction of the Corby Road was done supervised by the National Works Agency.
Okay.
In the same Malvern division, the same community, the adjoining community.
Yeah.
So when these people see asphalted concrete, and when they, chip and spray being done next door, and then they are expecting the road to be done, and then they read in the paper say it is turned on because of chip and spray. And it's being done
again, Mr. Clark, Mr. Witter, I read the story in the papers. I would like to see the question that was asked that matches with the answer given, because based on what I know, even in normal development application, the NWA gives advice to the municipal council, advice which it may or may not take. And our role is not a statutory role. We can't enforce that particular prescription. So we give advice on parking, we give advice on stormwater mitigation, we will give advice on road construction to the extent that the questions are asked. But we respect the authority of the municipal corporation to make their own decisions. But having made the decision, they have to own it. And that's how life goes. We make a recommendation, you can reject it or accept it, but once you have accepted it, you own it.
Yeah, but your observation, Mr. Hunter, is really comparing apples with eggs, because that is not the point here. The point here is that the NWA attends the CDF meeting, advise that committee that the road in question should not be done with chip and spray. That road is a parish council road. And what you're saying now is what should have been said in the committee. And then the committee would have maybe made a better decision. Because they were advised, the committee, that don't use it.
By an agent of the National Works Agency?
The parish council
okay, so I will look at the
parish council superintendent was present, and he made his point.
I don't know if he said that.
That we have been doing this.
I look at it.
And the road has stood up. And but the decision was made by the committee based upon the information that came from.
And we could understand if it was an NWA main road and not a parochial road.
Yeah, exactly.
Chairman, let me make one.
We need to move on, but
yes, well, let me make one last point to Mr. Witter.
To end up on reference to that.
Just for context, Mr. Witter, can you say factually whether that particular road is a major road for trucks and so on?
Is a what?
Major road used by trucks.
The road for a period, it is a cul-de-sac.
No, man, but do
I'm
trucks...
It is a cul-de-sac going to a small community.
No, you don't have to answer my question. Do trucks use that cul-de-sac road?
Yeah.
Every loaded trucks?
The road that is to be repaired.
Okay, so, and that is why I say...
it's a small community road.
Yeah. So, Mr. Witter, sorry. So that's why I'm saying that context is important. Sorry, Mr. Witter. I'm saying context is important. Now, I don't know where that road is, and I don't know the use of the road. I will have to find out if the person who made the representation had specific knowledge about that road, because if in fact that road is heavily traversed, utilized by farmers with a lot of goods, then
I'm telling you that the road in question is not heavily. It's
not a
community.
Oh, it's a walk-foot road.
Practically.
Oh, okay. All right.
We just want to pave it because the people just can't get out. It's pure mud.
Yeah,
and the people just can't get out. And we just want to pave it.
I think you need to look at it and see if... All right. So...
And that has been stated clearly.
Member Morrison.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And I must say I like the spirited discussion. Yes, new terrain for me, no pun intended. But it strikes me, though, that what we want to have is not our agencies operating as silos, but our agencies having clear communication, clear dialogue that is transmitted to the public. And the concerns that I'm going to raise, Chairman, I'm batting in favor of the public. So understand if I sound very layman in the concerns that I have. There is nothing like a community engineer when you walk into an area as a representative and they point on the road and they tell you how they believe that the road ought to have been repaired. And so I am guided by them this morning when asking this question. When we consider rehabilitation, and thank you for your presentation, there's a lot that I learned this morning. What should happen every 2 year, 5 year, 10 year. So I'm leaving here with learning moments. But when we do rehabilitation, what is the thing that drives us? Is it cost and or expedience, or is it the best prescription given the particular terrain? And how can we assure the public that they are getting value for money? How can we assure the public that a lot of research goes into road construction? Therefore, our teams would have known that in this area, when it rains, this is what usually happens. There's a lot of water on this section of the road, and therefore, when you're building, it is going to take a particular type of drain that is going to whisk away the water more effectively. And I'm not at the stage yet when I can speak of the merits of the chip and spray, yes or no. So my concern is going to be this. What is the process that goes into determining chip and spray? Or is it a case where it is pinned by cost? So sometimes we use the chip and spray in an area that needs a more resilient application. And coming out of this, I'm interested, Mr. Hunter, on learning about the differential standards that you made mention of. And I do believe that it is a discussion that we need to have, given where people live, given the number of people who live in certain communities, and therefore, what is the best application to bring them relief. And I'm also coming out of this, Chair, that the NWA is saying that they can only be as effective as the resources will enable. Another discussion we need to confront. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you for, well, there was questions and observation, Member Morrison. You know, Mr. Chairman, next time it helps if you introduce the members of the committee to us, because a lot of them are new to us. So no disrespect, I'm just trying to get the names down. What motivates us? Is it expedience, money, or value for money? Yeah. The truth about it is that there is a notion, or a belief in some quarters, that planning takes place in a very sedate, sterilized atmosphere, and out of that very sterilized, sedate atmosphere comes some wonderful plans. You know, modern business practices talk about disruption, talk about doing things out of the box or whatever. So there's no accepted paradigm in terms of the environment of planning. So Gordon Town is cut off, and there are thousands of people who can't move. Ambulances can't get up there. Fire trucks can't get up there. You obviously bring to that situation a different ethos and a different urgency than Mr. Witter's road in St. Elizabeth. So each circumstance precipitates its own demands. Now, let me address the subject of value for money, because that comes up a lot. And every time it comes up, it reminds me that I have very often not seen an analysis of the two parts of the equation, because value for money means expenditure and result, or expenditure, product. So I take it that your thesis is that if we spend $5, we should get $5 value. If we spend $100, you'll get $100 value, and that's called value for money. Where I find the disconnect in a lot of instances is that there is no nexus between what is spent and the expectation of the product. Yeah? So how do we ensure value for money at the NWA? Well, it's simple. First of all, value for money starts with you making sure that any purchase that you make is value for money. Any contract you award is awarded at the best price. Yeah? That's how value for money starts. We scrupulously follow the government's procurement rules in terms of purchase of material and purchase of contracting services. That is the linchpin. I sit on the Public Procurement Commission, and one of the driving pillars of the Public Procurement Commission is that the government should get value for money for all its procurements. So that's where you start. So we always and only use contractors in the right grade, appropriately qualified, handed to us by the state. We only buy things from registered suppliers. Now, you then take those products or those purchases and you make it into a product. And the question is, when you buy the material the right way, when you procure the contractor the right way, when he builds the road, is there value for the $100 that you spend? Okay? And as I was saying before, if you do a Highway 2000, Mr. Henriquez is sitting right there, he can tell you, East-West will cost you 10, 12 million US dollars a kilometer. We do Consent Spring and, well, not even Consent Spring, we do some other road and we're spending 200,000 US dollars a kilometer. So we're not buying, yeah, and I've seen it in the papers, yeah, the people say, well, why can't you build roads like the French? Of course we can, but it's $12 million a kilometer, okay? So it all depends on what you buy. Now, the Prime Minister himself did allude to it some time ago. We can make a decision that for this fiscal year, we will only build 2 roads. But from my experience, I'm yet to find an MP who will say, listen, don't touch my constituency this year. Go do Portland, and then I wait my turn. The truth is, a lot of times, our decision is informed by the money we have to spend. So, when we get $300 million to clean drains, do mitigation, rational engineering would say we examine the most critical drains, the one that has the greatest impact for most persons, and then that's where we would spend the $300 million. There's not one single MP down here. I've been here many times, and the first thing the MPs do, they tot up the expenditure, how much in PNP constituency, how much in GLP constituency, and if there doesn't appear to be equity in the expenditure, then we get crucified. Some, okay, some. So the point I'm making is this, and I'm not gainsaying the wisdom of that position. I'm saying that, like every plan, there's a plan, but there are constraints. So one of the constraints that we have to deal with is that when I get $300 million for mitigation for the whole country for the whole year, one of my success factors is to achieve equity. Then now, if you divide 300 million by 63, it tells you the minimum amount if you're doing it across the board and so on. That then translates into a work program, okay? So a lot of it is cost-driven. And the reason why it's cost-driven is that we get a certain allocation from the Ministry of Finance. We have no notion of what it's going to be for the next year. And now, in other jurisdictions, how it works, because there's certainty of funding, I can say to Ms. Hamilton, your rock bridge, you won't get it this year or next year, but in year 3, you will get your rock bridge. Because I have certainty of funding coming in. Year 1, I'm going to do this. Year 2, I'm going to do that. Year 3, I'm going to do that. So you can go back to your constituents. You can have a dialogue and say, with perfect certainty, that your rock bridge will be built in a particular year. The truth is, we don't have that degree of certainty now. And that also impacts the, the whole apparatus. So, Ms. Morrison, I would like to believe, I can give you some comfort in believing that we do the very best. I repeat something I said here last week, Tuesday. 1 year, and I remember with perfect certainty, the allocation for drain cleaning was $35 million for the whole country for the whole year. And a journalist asked me, so what you going to do with that? And I said, I'm going to clean $35 million worth of drain, which is what we do. So the money that we have to spend, we try and ensure that we get the best value for that spend. There's no illusion that the spend that we're making necessarily solve all the problems.
All right. Thank
Chair.
Madam
Chair,
Marks.
thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. Your response was extensive and I must say scholarly. No, as usual. No, Chair, I must add, however, that when I think of value for money, I have a more modern and enlightened view of value for money that goes beyond mere procurement. I am thinking of value for money as putting in the best infrastructure possible. That's value for money. It may be more costly, but for me, that's value for money. So that in my community of Northeastern St. Catherine, I won't have the village engineer saying to me, every time them come in and them build up the same type of road and water wash it away, them not realize that they keep doing the same kind of thing and you're getting the same type of result. And then it comes back to the conversation that NWA is having. In order to be more effective and to have the kind of value for money that I champion, it is going to take cash to care. Thank you so much.
Mr. Hunter, before you answer, we have to tighten up a little bit because we have two other ministries ahead of us and it is now after 12 o'clock and we have Member Jackson who wants to ask you a question also.
Oh, I was just going to say I completely agree with Ms. Morrison that it does take cash to care. But, you know, I have all of these anecdotes. There was an MP sometime in the distant past, and in his constituency was a road from Linstead to Geisel. I remember he asked us to do an estimate to rehab that road, and it was like $140 million. So when I told him, you know, $140 million, he says, fine. When we examined the budget, we had $35 million allocated for that job based on the money. So I said to him, are you prepared to wait until we get the rest? And he said, a joke, yeah, joke. Okay. It is a dilemma. We as the engineers, and I've always said to my staff, prescribe the ultimate engineering solution. But we don't make the financing decision. The challenge, and you know, I sometimes wish I had stayed in the States and worked with companies that have a lot of money so you can actualize your engineering training. But no, I never had that luxury. So I come back and we practice our engineering and we say, it will cost $150 million to do this. The money you have available is $30 million. And every day we try to make blood out of stone. Yeah? So we acknowledge the challenge and we continue to work.
All right. Member.
A couple comments. Mr. Hunter, thanks for the presentation. I guess the intention of this, you appearing like others this morning before this committee, was to give the country a sense of the gravity of the road damages from the rainfall, and more importantly, to allay any impractical expectations in terms of what can be achieved in what period of time. And I said to my friend here from St. James, and I heard one of my newer colleagues mention about what he expects the funding arrangement should be. You know, welcome, you know, to the real world that members of parliament have to deal with. I heard you said in the presentation, Mr. Hunter, that the roads, in a nutshell, major roads done were not damaged from the rainfall. I mentioned something in the sitting of the parliament recently to the Prime Minister in your presence of one of those completed roads, while not damaged, is improperly completed. And I speak of the Mandela Highway, two particular areas.
just when you leave underneath the bridge coming from Portmore, they indenture. And it has been there for months, and the NWSA has not sought to have the contractors remedy that, though payments would have been settled or on track for.
The premise is wrong. You're wrong on 2 points. You said the NWA has not sought to have the contractor. Well, thanks for the caveat. Yeah, to your knowledge.
Well,
I will be happy to enlighten you.
But I would have thought, though, you can disregard my good friend Eroy. It's customary response. Yeah. But you would have known it's not just for my sake, right, frankly, Mr. Hunter, it's for the public. All the commuters who know that use that road are speaking for those, well, all of them, Portmore and elsewhere. They drive on it and they hear nothing, well, nothing being done over the period.
Member
nothing
Jackson.
being said, so it is reasonable to expect that no effort has been made.
Okay, so Member Jackson, just as a,
let me give you the other one, and I complete that part of it. The other one is going over the Ferry River, along the Mandela Highway. Boom, boom. Similar to what happened in the North Coast Highway some years ago in the Hanover section. It's bad, right? And I'm just uncomfortable with the fact that no steps have been taken. So I just want to raise that.
Let me just answer that very quickly, Member Jackson, and for the benefit of the others. The MIDP program it's a design and build contract. So the contractor has the contractual obligation to design whatever we put to them and to build it. And he cannot and will not get paid until he fulfills the contract to the T. So that's it. So as to whether or not he has been paid for work not satisfactorily done, I can say without any fear of successful contradiction that that is no. Your other part of your question, has the NWA, as the engineers under the program, have we issued the necessary instructions to the contractor to make good? And the answer is yes. And I will be happy to share with you. So follow me now, Member Jackson. I will be happy to share with you all such correspondence. Now, under the contract, again, we have to abide by the prescription of the contract. Under the contract, we are obliged to give the contractor instruction. The contractor is normally required to obey the instruction. If he doesn't, we are entitled under the contract to withhold payment. And if he doesn't do it, if he doesn't do the remedial works within an agreed time frame, we have the authority under the contract with the consent of the owner to get somebody else to do the work. That is how the contract is structured.
And my only final question in that regard, you know, I don't need to see the documents and all of that. I take your word. You're a man of honor.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a timeline? Is there a timeline?
Yeah. Okay, so again, Member Jackson, all these contracts have built in it a provision, what they call the maintenance period, okay? And it is usually a year after we have issued the taking over certificate. So and we issue the taking over certificate when the contract is, 95% complete. And then the contractor has a year. So what we do, we go through with the contractor and we develop what's called a punch list.
So what is simple put, for those roads I put, by when they are supposed to fix it?
By then?
Yeah.
By December? Yeah, I'm being advised that by December.
By December next month?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what we want to hear.
Yeah, man.
Lastly,
so it's yeah,
man. No, man, would I like to just make it simple? Just one passing comment to my friend about the resolution for funding. And I said, oh, welcome to the club. Parliament has passed resolution to be acted upon. Not just a recommendation from a committee, from the full house. And they are yet to be acted upon. So, my friend, you know, don't lose your faith. Keep pressing. Thanks.
All right. That's it. Member Jackson? Just two questions from him, Mr. Hunter. In your presentation, damage assessment, right, this is on the second page. Bullet point 3, approximately 2.3 billion to clear block roads and approximately 5.4 to restore repair these damaged roads. So in total, this is about what, $8 billion that is needed?
No, the 2.3 is in the 5.4.
It's in the 5.4.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, because of
Sorry,
how you put it,
it
looks like it is two different. So you need 5.4 in total.
Yes.
Of the 3 roads that was mentioned last week that were inaccessible, have those been cleared? Which roads are?
Okay, so
I guess Gardentown Road is one. Yeah.
Right, and it's not just clearance for those roads; it's
so
reconstruction.
Which are the ones?
I have. Okay, so there's a Gardentown Road because of this thing. New Market because the water is continuing.
The flooding,
right, and Stetton, Papine to Bulby.
Okay, that's going Cane River over.
Right, and I don't know if you saw this video since morning of the one in Irish Town. Yeah, that
yes, I saw that, and I should have been on my way there this morning too. The Gordon Town, the bypass, Savage Pen. What's the time frame that you expect that we will be able to see some vehicular traffic using that route?
It's about 2 weeks. Chairman, as you know, you've been up there, it's a very difficult area, very difficult. And it continues to rain, and it's just mud.
And the reason why I'm asking, because as you would have given instructions for the alternate route, which is through Silver Hill Gap, Newcastle down Irish Town, and you see the problems that they're having also. That you're constant blocking at Silver Hill Gap and the Irish Town area. The only other route would be, if you can get to Silver Hill Gap, is going down to the Buff Bay Valley.
So it's a difficult.
So I'm sure residents on that end would like to know at least a time frame on when they would be able to have vehicular traffic coming through the Savage Pen. And you are saying about 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, with our fingers crossed, because the rains
once the weather holds up, you are saying 2 weeks' time. And my last question, in the instance on that same Gordon Town stretch, has there been any assessment done of any other weakening of the embankment or the roadways that may give, and will those be looked at?
The answer is yes,
repairs?
Yes and yes. And, I can share with you a report done by our lab people in terms of the formation, the rocks, the soil, and pointing to the probability of other incidents. Mm-hmm. The Prime Minister did ask us to examine a completely new alignment for a road, and we're working on that as well, because it has been accepted.
With that
soil
type, is that possible?
That Gontown Road has been there from 1770-something. The Prime Minister sent me an article on it from 1776. So you're talking about an old road.
I know, but for a real alignment, would that soil type take a real alignment?
Well, we're examining it. Yeah, we're looking at it and tests and all of that. Yeah. Move it away from the river.
My last question on the Lentman program. Because in the Prime Minister's presentation at the beginning of the financial year, spoke about pilot projects.
Yes.
Have those pilot projects started?
Yeah. We had agreed to do a pilot, and we had chosen.
There were 3 locations.
But we were going to start. We started on doing it, Dunrobin to Spanish Town. And we have been. Yeah, man, that corridor. Yeah.
Oh, Washington
Boulevard, all the way down, Mandela. What that does is give us an opportunity to iron out the kinks and to become familiar with what we're doing. So we're working on that.
No,
we're working
what I want to know, only one of the 3 proposed
pilots
have started?
We have started. Yes. We have done the assessment. Yeah, the assessment is completed, I'm told, for that first pilot. Yeah.
Right, so
a pilot is a pilot, and it guides you when you go into implementation.
I understand that, Mr. Hunt. I'm just trying to get from you, out of the 3 proposed pilots, it is only one that has started.
The assessment.
Thank you very much, Mr.
I wouldn't
Hunt.
say only one. I would say
My
one
gosh,
has been completed.
It's amazing that you're not a lawyer.
So, Mr. Chairman, sorry, through you, I'm hearing a discussion about the roads at Gordon Town and so forth, and I know Mr. Hunter is aware of it. I also know that there are some temporary repairs being starting very shortly, but I have a road, and I speak up for both my constituency, Clarendon Northwestern, that has a particular road, one road only, that joins Thompson Town and Victoria, and it's non-existent almost. And the alternative is actually through private land, and there is really technically no alternative. And I know we're talking about some temporary repairs now, which I'm appreciative for and I'm sure would be good. But as my constituents continuously say to me, and I know you can't give me an exact date, and I'm not asking that today because I do understand, but are we going to get that piece of main road repaired in at least the near future properly? It is the only link between these communities coming right down, as you know, into Moko after Thompson Town and so forth, and it's a very critical piece of roadway. Could you help me with that?
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I have particular sympathy for Member Henriquez, him being used to, highway roads and toll roads, and he has now been demoted to little village roads. So I feel your pain.
Point of order, so not village road,
Mr. Henriquez, yes, we will look at the thing, and you and I talk off camera sometimes. So
and I know the Prime Minister said there was a different program. I just wanted to make sure that it didn't get forgotten in the talk about Gordon Town and all these other critical roads.
It's not forgotten.
And just my last, on that Irish Town Road, and we have seen photographs. I mean, I passed it on last Saturday. That house that is perched right at the top of that breakaway.
Yeah.
And what are the immediate plans? And the reason why I ask.
Okay.
The reason why I ask, persons can't just be traveling when that house is.
The person has moved out. I've been advised, and we're trying to dismantle the house. Yeah.
And that will be done soon because.
Oh yes.
Yeah, because that landfall was in the same vicinity. Yeah. So okay, thank you. All right, members, no more questions for the NWA. We thank them and thank Madam Sewell. All right, and if we don't see you again before Christmas, have a very, very safe and COVID-free Christmas.
Thank you, Sim.
Unless you would like to. Yeah. Well, you know, your ministry is one that goes very wide, you know. So. Members, time is upon us. We'll invite the Ministry of Agriculture to just come forward. You want to stay there? All right. All right. Well, they're asking you to come forward for the recording purposes of the. So please come forward. All right, members, as we resume, we'll ask Mr. Spence, gentleman, please, Mr. Spence to introduce his team and make his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries is pleased to appear before the PAAC. I want to say a warm good morning to members of the committee, my colleague PS, who still remains to be questioned, and with me this morning to present on the matter and answer questions relating to the Farm Road Rehabilitation Program and the recent flood damages is Mr. Delroy Coley, to my immediate left, my colleague from the ministry, and to my right is Mr. Peter Thompson, leading the team from RADA. He's the CEO. To his right is Mr. Pendergrass. He's the works engineer in RADA that deals with the farm road. And behind them over there is Mr. Gaynor, the financial controller. As mentioned earlier on from the presentation, and consistent with our recognition of the responsibility that this ministry has to be executed through RADA, is that we are responsible for the maintenance and rehabilitation of some 1,500 kilometers of farm road, which represents approximately 10% of the national roads network. Fact is, Mr. Chairman, we continue to be supported through the Ministry of Finance with funds to rehabilitate farm roads. So over a period of, for this current budget here, a total of some 77 roads are approved for rehabilitation. 16 roads carried over from last financial year, 1920, were rehabilitated in the first quarter at a cost of some $126 million. And 61 roads approved for rehabilitation in this financial year, 2021, at a cost of $525 million. 32 of the 77 approved roads were rehabilitated as at November 2021. But, Mr. Chairman, the rains have come, and what we're seeing is of the 58 roads that would have been some 58 roads which have been repaired from 2016 all the way up to November have been damaged. And the total estimated cost of repairs for these roads is $139 million thereabouts. And the total length of the road would be about 29 or so kilometers. In terms of our assessment, Mr. Chairman and members, what we're talking about across the damage permeates over 13 parishes covering the 58 roads, varying from very, very poor or extremely damaged that would require very urgent repairs. The number of roads that would require very urgent repairs, about 22. About 35 of them would be urgent, and one there that is fairly urgent. We also note that there are two particular roads that we, based on our evaluation, one in East Rural St. Andrew, which our estimates coming up at about 12 million. And that road is a very long road. These kinds of roads are usually outside of the scope of the farm road budget. And so we'll have to have further dialogue with other agencies to consider that one. There's also one in Portland, which we're estimating to be about 10 million, and that's Portland West, also usually outside of the scope of what we do. Mr. Chairman, of the 430 roads rehabilitated by RADA to date, 58 roads totaling approximately 29 kilometers, as I indicated, are badly damaged, and 52 of these 58 roads were rehabilitated between financial years 2015 to 2020. The remaining 6 roads were targeted for repairs during the 2021 financial year, and these have sustained further damages. Remember, when we are talking about farm roads, for the better part, we are talking about a process of continuous rehabilitation. So there might be roads that are there in poor condition, or very poor condition, or even fair condition, that are lengthy, and we would have chosen the worst sections of the road to repair, which would have had the greatest impact on the farming community to get produce out and to alleviate the situation. So overall, Mr. Chairman, we're looking at an estimated $139 million to repair some 58 roads at about 29 kilometers long. That represents our opening and general summary of the situation, and I'll hand over to Mr. Thompson, who will now proceed to answer the specific questions with a little more detail that were asked by the PAAC. Mr. Thompson.
Wait, let me. So, you basically went through the presentation itself. So just for time constraints, let me just ask members of the committee if they have any questions on the presentation, and then we can move forward. All right? Go ahead, member.
PS, through you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, or good afternoon, as the case is. I heard you mention just a little bit about roads that were before the rains that were supposed to be rehabilitated. Mr. Pendergrass, you and I would have journeyed up into the farming district of Flower Hill. That is the same Refuge Road and Newtown Road. What has become, because those roads were supposed to be over and done with as it relates to repairs. But then came that eventful month, and we had to put it on hold. And then the rain came, sorry. What has happened since? Or what is to happen?
Member, good morning, Chairman. Is that morning or afternoon? Those roads that were slated to be done, they're in the tendering process now, and we hope for them to be finalized by the middle of December. So the rains would have held them back, and of course we want to ensure that we complete them before the end of the financial year.
Any other questions, members? Any questions on the report that was given? Go ahead, member.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Prendergast, I don't know if it is an error but I would believe so. If you look on a section where you see Westmoreland,
on which one?
I've seen here McNeese land.
Just hold up the document.
This one. McNeese land and Charles Mountain. It said central. And I would want to understand that it means central Westmoreland.
Yes.
But just to make some correction there, that McNeese land is in western, and also Charles Mountain is in eastern. Okay.
Just on the report that you had presented to us, Sir Pierce and Mr. Thompson, you gave us a list here of the roads that have been damaged, farm roads, which is why you're here, so that we can get a better understanding on basically the roads that you have done that are damaged and what it will take to bring them back into proper use. One of the concerns is that you're putting out roads, and you make mention of it, that you're putting down roads, but there's no maintenance resources for you to maintain these roads. Yeah? And I see where you have some prescriptions in trying to, but this 139 million now, that you have put here as a cost for the estimated repairs to these damaged roads. Where will these funds come from? Is it your current budget, or is it additional funds that will be needed to effect repairs to these roads?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, Chairman, we will start to see how best we can access some funding outside of what we would have allocated for the roads that we have in train. So if we would have to, get the rehabilitation funds from the existing budget that we have, it means that we would have to shelve some of the roads that we have, so we don't want to do that.
So as it is right now, you really don't have any resources in effecting these repairs?
Let me just add something, Mr. Chairman. Turn off your mic. Recall there were two recent presentations by the Minister of Agriculture on rehabilitation works to be undertaken. There was a decision by Cabinet that asked ministries to redirect funds to respond to the present calamity that occurred following the rains. The identification of farm roads that need to be eagerly and urgently addressed was given consideration, and within the current budget for farm roads, monies that have not been executed as yet, we had looked back to see the roads that would need immediate attention, and so a portion of this estimate would include monies that are currently available to be able to address some of these urgent needs. So rather, I was asked to assess the roads that are in such a bad state that you have to move to them immediately and to redirect accordingly. So we have things that vary in stages of tendering, and those that are beyond any adjustment based on where they are, we are proceeding with those, which is what Mr. Thompson just spoke to.
Okay, so those that may not have gone to tender yet may have a little delay,
right,
and try to effect some repairs on these roads.
Right.
All right. And about how many roads you have out to tender now that has reached that stage of the process?
10.
Turn on the thing.
10 roads.
And the value of?
I think it's 126 million.
126 million. Yeah. Because when I look at the list here, Mr. Thompson, you have roads here that were done in 2019, 2020. And just looking at the top of the list here, East Rural, Tower Hill, and Flamstead, Somerset, where these damages, and one of the damages were done, but you spent 9 million on these roads, and you're now seeing repairs of aggregated about 18 million dollars for repairs of these roads. I want to find out from you, because one of the issues that keep coming up, Mr. Spence, is proper drainage when we're doing the roads, doing these roads. Because let's take the one in Tower Hill, which is in East Rural. So I'm looking back at your master list. Yeah? And Tower Hill, where is it here now? $9 million was spent. 9 million was spent on that roadway. And as I said, each time we come back here and we discuss it, with the amount of money that is allotted to a roadway, we may need more, but the question I want to know is, when we're doing these repairs to these roadways, where it is seen that needs additional drainage, will those be considered and be included in the repairs that we're doing?
Yes, Chairman, we will look at the drainage of these roads. But I want to tell you that when you see a road like the one you have just mentioned, we would have only do 0.5 kilometers.
Yeah, which is
right. So the entire length of the road, if you go further, sometimes you have breakaways, which normally we would not do any work on that.
Certain areas.
In certain areas. So you would have breakaways. So it means that now when we go back, we would have to correct whatever damage done to the existing part that was done, plus an additional to get the road accessible to vehicular as well as pedestrian.
Yeah, I have an idea of that Flamstead Road because most of it is shale.
Yes.
Yeah. So RADA is taking on basically the clearing of the road if it is blocked outside of the area that you did repairs.
Right.
Which will have an additional expense to RADA, which
right.
you don't have in your budget either.
Right.
Yeah. So Spencer, we have a serious problem then.
Mr. Chairman, the damage to the road have come at this time with the rains, and we are experiencing the difficult challenges nationally with the COVID pandemic and revenues and what have you. But it is indeed, if it had to come, it's a good time, because right now we're at a stage where we are in budget preparation, and we have started a dialogue with the Ministry of Finance, and they have been very receptive to give due consideration, especially to the reallocation of funds, because within the ministry itself, we have some projects, and because of the COVID and other factors, procurement and such, we're looking at how we can work with the Ministry of Finance to redirect. Fortunately, as a part of the overall development of a robust maintenance program, RADA has acquired, how many backhoes you get recently? Three backhoes. Some kind of machinery and equipment that will seek to assist with the program. Now, these will become part of the regular RADA machinery, and so it becomes then a recurrent exercise to execute activities with those kind of equipment, while the farm road program will be supported. From the previous meetings that we have had and the emphasis placed on the maintenance, we have taken a decision, and recall that a quality control committee was established in RADA and all of these things to ensure that the matter of the drainage and those things are taken care of. But we are indeed faced with a challenge now. And so what we're looking at is really trying to prioritize and to critically deal with those roads that require the kind of attention that will impact the economy immediately. Farmers to get the produce out in built-up areas and that kind of thing. But we'll continue to work with the Ministry of Finance, and we'll find a way through.
When you speak about redirecting funds, first thing come to my mind is that something else is going to be delayed, and it was on the budget because it is seen as a priority. Yeah? So, I mean, I understand the tightness in the fiscal space, but moving forward, and just you heard the conversation with NWA, is ensuring that there is at least a program for rehabilitation or maintenance of the roads. Because sometimes we put on these roads, and we have seen it. You have no maintenance, potholes start riddle the roadway, and within a few years you basically have to resurface the same road that you did some time ago. And many of your roads are done double surface, the chip and spray. So the lifespan on them are not that great. I know in areas where you have heavy water flow, you use the hot mix. So the maintenance of that double surface roadway is, because of the short lifespan, it needs that maintenance, not only of just patching it, but keeping the drains clean. And the NWA doesn't participate on farm roads in cleaning those drains. So it is something that needs to be looked at in the future if we want to maintain these roads for a longer lifespan. All right, so I urge that you at least look at that road maintenance in your budget moving forward, not only the construction of roads, but the maintenance of these roads and verges. All right? Member.
Chairman, through you quickly. I want to support that because there's some of the farm roads that we have that because the drainage and so forth is not being maintained, the water is actually running from the road straight off the road into people's farms.
Or off the farm straight onto the road.
Vice versa, and destroying their crops as well. Because when there's no drain to carry it down the road, it just goes straight into their land and eat out and destroy their crops. So it's both. I just wanted to make that point.
All
yes,
right.
Chairman, I'm also supporting the point that you have made. And we have to really insist on the importance of maintaining our roads via good drainage standards. We absolutely must. For too many communities across Jamaica, we are seeing where what could be an excellent road network that would service the people very well, compromised because the drainage provision is so poor, right? We are going to continue to encourage RADA and other agencies. And as the team here, you have already committed that this is indeed something that you are going to take into consideration. We must have effective drainage system to whisk away the water. Too many of our roads, days after heavy rains, we see water settled on the roads.
Just a final question, Mr. Thompson. Any of these roads here are completely blocked that farmers can't get in and out their produce?
Well, the roads in Upper St. Andrew, you would have agreed that the contractor cannot go up in that area because of the breakaway in the Garden Town area. So, I mean, you would imagine that, yes, we have produce, but the produce just cannot come to Kingston freely.
No, okay, no, all right. Let's take the Tower Hill or Flamstead Road.
Yes.
Any of these farm roads, as you mentioned, there might be breakaway, there might be a land slippage.
Yes.
Any of those outside of the Garden Town Road, any of these farm roads are blocked?
Not totally blocked, but reduced to
so it can be used even if it's a one lane?
Yes.
All right, no, that's just what.
I just want to member Morrison that going forward in our new budget year, we will be focusing heavily on drains. But one of the things that I want to point out to the committee is that sometimes when you have natural waterways that would allow the water to run off the road into the farmers' premises, I mean natural waterways, they blocked it, and it creates more problem than anything else.
Sir Pierce, you know, that is over to you. No, and it is a real problem. And we have had multiple discussions on that. But I always said you can lean on the members of parliament during that period to, so they can give some assistance in persuading the farmers because normally they want some compensation at some point. And it's a real thing because once they block it, that means the water won't come and wash away their piece of field that it's going through. And many a times that the maintenance again of those earth drains, most of them are earth drains. You know, nowadays is a new dispensation where a earth drain pass through a man's property and you pay him for cleaning his own drain. Yeah? It's something that we need to get rid of, right? But it always comes back down to compensation, PS. But, but it is something that will help to maintain the road because he's benefiting from the roadway. and also at the time when the drain cleaning comes through his property. But I would urge you to see if you can get assistance from the members of parliament when you meet into those type of roadblocks and see if they can help to persuade those farmers. All right. Members, any other questions for Radha?
Sure. I read where there is a matrix now being developed to determine the roads that need to be prioritized. What's the timeline? What's the timeline for this to be completed? Because, as was mentioned before, there are a number of farmers who have been affected by the recent rains. So I just wanted to know how long before we can see a report.
Mike. By the end of December, we should see most of the roads that are affected get some attention. And of course, the PS had alluded to the fact that we might have to redirect some funds from other areas to address.
And just one
Can I just add before you proceed
Okay.
that the matrix has already been developed.
Okay.
So we're using that now to guide how we proceed to address the roads.
So that matrix is it possible for us to get?
Yes.
Because I was looking at some of the documentation that you brought with you this morning, and I was trying to understand. You have a key here that speaks to good, fair, and poor.
Right.
Just trying to get an understanding as to what each category means in relation to the response.
Right.
Because I see quite a bit of fair roads here that are being given attention, and I'm not sure if we have maybe neglected to put other poor roads on it. I don't know what the status of these fair roads are.
Let me just explain this. This is a document you're looking at.
The Farm Road Rehabilitation Program.
Right. So the condition that you see there with P and F that indicates fair and poor and so, that is before the rains. And the need for repair, under the need for repair column, is where you have now very urgent, fairly urgent, which is based on the condition prescribed out of the matrix, which deals with the situation regarding the farmers there now. They have produce, how bad is the road, and one must always recall that some of these roads, even though we are talking about farm road, it's a portion of the road. So the prescription here in terms of fair and whatever would be speaking to the section that we had worked on before. And with respect to now the current situation after the rains, it's an overall evaluation in terms of the urgency.
Thanks for the clarity, because just looking at the document, you would see a road that is good, that is in urgent need of repair, and you wonder why. You know? So I don't know, maybe going forward you could probably put some remarks just to indicate what the issue is.
We'll try our best to make it clear.
And also, P.S., within another 2 weeks or so, can you just send a report to the committee just basically on where you are now, refunding-wise, in affecting these maintenance programs that and repairs that you're asking about. All right?
No problem.
Thank you. Last question.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to get some clarity here. This document, the one behind where it shows the overall program, appendix, the master list. This is everything to date that hasn't been done and has been done, or it's just the master list? Any of these completed already, or?
Some completed.
Some
That's
completed,
just
but
a
we don't
master
know
list
which
coming
ones.
back from,
But we don't know which ones are actually completed yet.
No,
Sorry.
the one,
I know, but
the
I don't
ones
know
that
how-
are in colors.
Sorry, I don't know which ones. Okay, sorry. You go ahead and give me some clarity.
Well, the engineer just reported that the ones that are in purple are those that have been already fixed.
Already fixed.
Right?
No. sorry, sir. One more.
Member, just to indicate that this document needs to be updated. So it represents the master list of the roads that RADA treat with us under the Farm Road Program. But there's need for updating because this represents a previous commitment to the committee before now to always have a master list that we continue to update. And that is how this document came about.
Okay, thank you. That's why I was asking the question, because I noticed that some things were, and I just didn't know the timeline of when this document was last updated.
Right.
So you'll let us have a new updated document shortly. Okay, and if there are any roads in our areas or otherwise that are known, we can do a recheck and to add or subtract and work. Okay, and the other question I had quickly, Chairman, was that we have that same issue of choosing which roads are repair based on economic impact. Do you have that formula? That's the same formula we were talking about earlier?
Yes, we use demographic data to determine the priority of the roads to be fixed. So we look at the number of farmers, the number of hectareage of land under production in the area, and of course, the productivity of the particular area.
If you look on the list, you'll see.
Yes,
if you look on the master list, you'll see that also.
Right, I see the master list. I just wanted to know that it's the two lists are aligned.
And in consultation with the members of parliament for the different areas.
And the RADA extension officer.
Right, so this will be updated as well. Because I know personally there's a lot of stuff here that, in fact, one place here I don't even know of it existing in the constituency. But it's still here as a particular place, and I have a difficulty understanding the BP.
What I find with the list itself, as a member from Westmoreland had mentioned, is that I see places here that's a northwest, but it's actually northeast.
Correct.
So it's just a clarification that needs to be made by.
That's why I was asking, Chairman, if we could just get that clarification, organization, because there are areas, if that's the case here, by.
Once you identify it, I will say to you, just speak to your parish manager or speak to Mr. Thompson, and they will.
And we'll get an
make
updated position. We'll get an updated position in the near future.
Definitely.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, members, if we have nothing further for the Ministry of Agriculture, I will say thank you to the members, Mr. Spence and his team, and we'll ask the Ministry of Local Government to move forward and hopefully can get through quickly as we did with the Ministry of Agriculture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
And please remember that update in 2 weeks' time so we can help to track how the funding, the financing is going towards. All right, thank you. Madam Pierce, are you ready? Thank you for, you have to press the,
thank you.
All right, Madam Mrs. Marshall Henry Martin, members, as normal, we'll ask you to introduce your team and to make your opening remarks.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the PAC, and also to the clerk and other members. It's good afternoon. Did I say
It's
good
afternoon,
morning?
yes.
Good afternoon. We are representing the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, and on the team today is Mr. Dwight Wilson, Senior Director, Technical Services and Major Projects, Mr. Rupert Price, to my far left, Senior Director, Parochial Revenue Fund Branch, and to my immediate right, Mrs. Anisha Gordon McFarlane, Principal Finance Officer. And so this afternoon, we just want to briefly indicate to the committee what it is that is happening with the parochial road infrastructure and the community roads across the islands. As indicated to you previously, sir, we would have embarked on consulting with each municipal corporation in order to ascertain the reports that you would have asked for, the responses to the respective questions posed to the ministry. 7 questions were posed: the number of parochial roads, length of road by parish, condition prior to the rainfall, and the number of kilometers of roads damaged by recent rains, estimated repairs, construction, etc., repairs for construction or reconstruction rather, report on how these roads will be prioritized, and an update on the arrangements for clearing of roads at the local level. Now, members would have received 2 sets of presentation. They are basically the same. So one is really a PowerPoint and the other is the Word format. And so for this afternoon, I'm going to ask Mr. Dwight Wilson to take you through whichever you find more useful, whether the PowerPoint or the Word format you may choose to utilize, whichever one is more suitable to you. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, PS. Good afternoon, Chairman, members, colleagues. We want to begin by stating that the Ministry of Local Government has responsibility for the vast majority of roads in the island. Depending on what figure we adopt at a total, then it will be anywhere from 75% to 80% of the entire island network. The NWA has 5,000 kilometers. We have, at our last estimate, 20,000, which would include community roads because they, by default, end up being maintained by the local authorities. So if you look at the presentation, or the one given to you, you will see those figures being tabulated by parish, and it also shows the percentage of the roads in each parish. So yes, the table here shows the total of 20,000, which, as I said before, would include a number of community roads, and it shows the varying percentages. The next slide will show our condition as of this moment, where we see that most of the network is in need of some sort of intervention, whether total rehabilitation or what we call periodic maintenance. And periodic maintenance, as would have been mentioned earlier by Mr. Hunter, includes elements of resurfacing, drainage, road furniture, such as retaining walls, patching to an extent, which if we do sheet patching over large areas, then that would be considered as periodic maintenance. The next slide gives us specifically the report on the damages based on the recent rains. And the caveat here is that the assessments island-wide have not yet been completed, but the information we have to date would indicate that we have suffered over $2 billion worth of damage to the island's parochial road network. There are over 300 roads that were affected island-wide. And as I said, I want to point out again that these figures would be subject to change based on information that comes in as time goes by. Right, and I should point out that in some cases, The figures were done but have to be revised since rain fell during the time when the report was done. So in order to give a more accurate assessment, Chairman and members, we would caution that these figures should not be taken as cast in stone. Our response to date through the local authorities, and I should point out here that while the ministry retains overall responsibility and oversight, the day-to-day management of the roads are done by the various local authorities. So St. Mary has their set of roads. They are directly responsible for the maintenance and rehabilitation. The ministry provides policy direction, support, and not just in terms of technical issues, but also in terms of financing. Where possible, the ministry will provide funds to enable the LAs to carry out their works. For us, in terms of our response, what we want to do is highlight anything that relates to public safety, clearing of roads, breakaways, landslides, and of course, restoring vehicular access to the various communities. And those activities started immediately once the rains were subsided to some extent and work was able to be done. And I do not believe that at this point we have any any parochial road that remains to be cleared. So, Chairman, in contrast to my previous colleagues, I will not be so verbose. So at this point, that is essentially our presentation, and I will take we will take questions to the peers.
I thank you for your considerations.
Yes, I always consider it, Chairman.
Mr. Chair, sorry, it was something I remiss of me from the very start, but just the purpose is it's the Chairman's birthday today.
Oh.
Isn't it, sir? And I shouldn't say.
I was wondering what it is that I did wrong.
and you know the time is running away from you. So,
thank you very much, member. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, member. Yes, sir. But I now open the floor for the questions from the members on the presentation. No, man, no. I appreciate it, member. Any questions, members? All right, let me start while the members wait. Prepare themselves. You know, it is interesting though, and I mean, thanks for the presentation and a similar one given to us by the NWA, and it basically gives you an overall view of our road network. Because in your presentation, you're saying that 20% of the parochial roads are in a fair to good condition.
Yes.
30% needs periodic maintenance required, but 50% need reconstruction or rehabilitation. In contrast to the National Works Agency, which has 15% good, 30% fair, and 55% bad. Now we see why it is that our population, our citizens are really saying where it is that their tax-paying dollars really going to. If it is that on both sides, over 50% of your roadways need some reconstruction or rehabilitation overall. We know that the Ministry of Local Government and the municipal councils, funding comes from a different source than central government itself. From your land taxes and your various different taxes which the parochial authorities deal with. But is there a broader plan in dealing with, as we had the discussions with National Works Agency, and you were present for those discussions, is there a broader plan in rehabilitating some of these roads over a period of time, be it 15, 20, 30 years or 50 years? Is there a broader plan out of the resources, or is there any plan at all in dealing with these roadways? And I'm sure that the citizens would love to hear if there is one or not.
Yes, Chairman. Thank you again. The concerns that we have are almost identical to those of the NWA, where the needs far outweigh the resources that are provided or that are available. But to answer your question specifically, we had looked at what we call priority roads across the island, identified by each local authority. These are roads that fall into various categories, such as they lead to health centers, schools, markets, farming communities, and generally speaking, dense urban areas where there's a need for road repairs. So at one point, we are proposing now at least a 10-year program that would see an intervention each year addressing 10% of those priority roads. Of course, the funding is where we usually tend to get humbugged because neither our own resources nor those from the Ministry of Finance have been able over the past.
So you have a plan but no money?
Precisely. So what we have been doing is just basically using our own resources to do as much as we can.
So even if you can't do 10%, not
no,
even 1%? No, I'm just saying, since you have a plan and you know those roads,
yes.
Then there's no even attempt to reduce it from 10% to 1%. You're doing one road per parish, one per constituency, whichever, or
yes.
one per
division.
division.
Case, right.
Is
yes.
is that going to be a plan going forward?
That is what we're doing, Chairman and members. What we're doing is identifying those roads from the priority list, and each municipality targets one or two of those roads every month from their own sources. So we have been doing the plan, but we just need to expand it.
Is it possible for the committee to get a list of those? I mean, I know it will take you some time because
yes,
it's municipality, but at least in the new year,
yes.
so that we can see those roads that have been done?
Certainly, Chairman.
Yeah, it will be good. Member.
There are a few parishes for which nothing has been, estimates have been submitted, but there are reported damages in those.
Yes.
There are, just that you don't get the estimates.
Yes, Member Jackson.
Okay.
And in some cases, what was sent in is being revised due to further rains.
Okay.
So it's not that we have no information at all. We have some information, but for accuracy, we wanted to ensure that we capture.
Okay.
And of course, we will provide information
yes,
to the committee.
On the same list, and since in those parishes that you have identified that you have gotten estimates from already, will this $2+ billion be financed out of own sources from at the local level, or is this going to be how is the funding? What are the discussions taking place with these fundings?
I would like to defer to PS on this, but just to say that I think it would be a combination of both own sources and external funding.
All right, so just like with the other agencies, where are we now with this? So more specific.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as the previous ministries had indicated, certainly the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, that we remain in dialogue with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service in relation to funding support for the rehabilitation. But of course, the local authorities, where they had emergency situations, would have already proceeded to utilize resources from their special grant for repairs to clear the roads and to do what was necessary at the immediate time.
So, like how the National Works Agency has a program now, really, just a patching program to ensure that even some of these heavily traversed roadways are patched. Will the Ministry of Local Government be doing a similar program, at least in the short term? Because some of these roads, every 2 feet you move is a pothole right now. Is there going to be a program that will address some of these roadways?
Yes, Chairman. But as I said earlier, that the initial response prioritizes public safety. So where there are dangerous situations, such as breakaways or landslides that represent a danger, then the LAs would move to correct those first. The road surfaces are also going to be targeted with respect to getting them at least drivable. We're not at this point thinking of any rehabilitation, just right now to restore access in the immediate future.
So this $2.2 billion
This
addresses what?
This includes aspects of repairs as well as clearance and necessary retaining structures that need to be built in the interest of public safety. But it is not exhausted, as I said, that even figures here may change, and then when we add the additional figures, we expect that this number would go up. But this figure would include some element of repairs.
Do you have a cost of just bringing back some of these roads to proper driving conditions?
It normally runs 10 to 15% of the estimated cost of rehabilitation. While it's not broken down here, in the past, when we've had these
No, and why I ask, this is basically to deal with public safety, as you put it. Right?
In the first instance.
Yeah, $2.3 billion. But then as we just accepted that you have some roadways that, I mean, what would take you 2 seconds from one end to the other is taking you 5 minutes. Do you have a cost of rehabilitating some of those roads at least to decent driving conditions coming out of the damages caused by the rains?
Yeah, let me clarify, Chairman. This 2.2 includes some of that. This 2.2
This
includes,
is some of it, so
yes,
not about all of it. All of what is needed. Do you have an overall cost of what is needed? You said some of it. So in the instance of the National Works Agency, they said, look, we need $5.5 billion to clear the block roads and at least get it into a condition that is drivable. And that is all the roads that they have estimated. Yes. So you're saying this $2.3 billion includes the same thing for your agency or for the ministry?
The $2.2 billion, Chairman and members, would include the public safety components as well as some components of rehabilitation or repairs. That breakdown would have to be given to you, but we do not yet have the full figures, so we couldn't tell you precisely at this point. But just to say that the 2.2 includes public safety issues as well as restoring surfaces across the island.
All right. Any questions, members? Just on the community roads, as you mentioned, and I mean, I have issues with some of them in my constituency. Subdivisions that have not really been handed over to the local authority, but yet still those who live in these subdivisions are expecting us as their elected representatives, both at the local level and at the constituency level, to do some repairs to these roads. And at the local level, they can't because they have not been handed over. Is there any plans at looking at some of these subdivisions in dealing with, because there are residents who actually live in there and your taxes are being collected from them. But is there a plan at looking at, because this is a long-standing issue, is there any plans of dealing with it?
Certainly, Chairman. And I should just add that even in the instances where they're not formally taken over, based on representation made at a local level, I have known that in some instances the local authority may actually repair the roads, even though they're not formally taken over. So it's not that they have been abandoned or neglected entirely, but as you said, there are constraints with respect to the legalities of the matter.
My wider question to you, is there a plan really
yes, because
in formalizing the arrangement than doing something as a side?
As discretionary.
As a discretionary.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was just indicating to my colleague, yes, to recall that there is in fact a direction at the policy level to look into the matter of managing subdivision roads in partnership with our sister ministry, who has responsibilities for the subdivisions that would have not yet been taken over. So that is presently in train.
Yeah, and it's something that I eagerly look forward to. I mean, in Manchester we have quite a bit of them that are from the 70s, and they are part of a formal community itself. But it causes great pain to these residents because the local authorities are unwilling to touch them, and we, as members of parliament, don't get a lot of funds to even be able to effect the repairs. So they are in no man's land, and I think as taxpayers, at least something from a policy directive or a policy position in trying to see how it is that we can bring them into the central system instead of just leaving them out there to fend for themselves. Member Hamilton.
Based on what you asked, Chair, in relation to these subdivisions, are there any legal implications to the local authorities taking over these subdivisions? Because wouldn't it have hinged on the developer completing the works and then handing over?
Yes, that would have been the requirement, the basic requirement, that the subdivision was completed in accordance with the approved joints. But over the years, there have been varying issues where some conditions were not met, and despite interventions, the required actions have not been taken. I think the question is, the issue is that once the local authority takes it over, then they assume all liability for the road. And as such, they are, in some cases, reluctant to do so. In recent times, for example, if I may call an agency, NHT, has been partnering with us, and they have been providing funds to bring the roads up to the standard that are required. And then we have taken those over. And that process is ongoing. So what we have done, we have engaged the individual developers. The NHC probably is the largest such one. And so we have a working partnership with them where funds are provided, and once the roads are brought up to the standard, then the parish council takes them over.
So I'm looking at it from a different perspective as well, because you have some of these developments that have been undertaken by particular developers over the years.
Right.
They come with a history, for example. So you do one development, it is incomplete, and then the same developer goes to another development, and it is still incomplete. What is therefore the role of the municipal corporations then to say at some point, okay, this developer has a history, and so you take a different approach to how certain approvals are given, for example?
Thank you so much, Member. Yes, we have seen that trend, and the local authority, in its own right as a local authority, reserves the right to determine how it will treat with the individual developer, and that local authority may or may not decide to take the actions that could be taken within the remit of the law, as well as to place caveats on the respective developments in respect of those that would have not been compliant with the conditions. So it's a very important consideration. The fact that it is manifesting the way we're seeing it manifest now is also an opportunity for us to re-engage, to say how do we therefore move forward if there's any area that would have failed.
With your permission, if I understand my colleague's question from North Trelawney, is basically where you have a developer who repeatedly fails to complete infrastructure. Is there a concern, which I share and I want to support? And Madam PS, I don't believe it is acceptable that a matter like that should be left to each local authority. There must be some minimum standards by all developers across the country. You have one ministry that has oversight for all the municipalities. And where you have a developer repeatedly building communities, leaving them incomplete. I have had one in my constituency too, right? And I know of other in Portmore where the people suffer at the end, because let's face it, many of these persons are anxious to own a home. And out of that anxiety, they will take the house before the infrastructure work is complete, with the hope that it will be completed. It must be the state that protects these people. We are the ones that give approvals to these developers to do these development. So we must not allow them. It's okay if they did it once. But a developer who has an incomplete development should be blocked from doing another until that one is completed. And you prevent that one from repeating that failure, and you send a clear message to all others with such intention. You can't do it and get away. So the intent of my colleague's question, which I think I interpret correctly, I fully share and I fully support. And the ministry must lead the way in imposing these minimum requirements on these local authorities.
Mr. Chair, just a follow-up.
Go ahead, member.
I know that the issue of these development, I know that the granting of titles to the developer would, there are conditions that would affect the issuing of the titles. And a part of the conditions is the issue of the infrastructure. So I don't know how these developers would be able to sell the property in terms of the transfer of title to these owners without the proper title. I don't know, the parish council normally would not issue the approval for the titles to be granted. So I don't know what consideration the ministry has in that regard, in terms of how it impacts the whole question that is being raised here. Yes,
you can answer.
I'm waiting
he's
for
looking for an answer.
Mr. Chairman, I might sound a little hoarse. I have to admit the carpet.
Okay,
because
we'll get you out here soon.
Yes, a little bit of allergies. But just to say that the issues being raised by the members in respect of these subdivisions is a long-standing issue, and that, as I had indicated previously, that it is a matter that we are looking into treating with. In respect of the issuance of title, it is a fact that when conditions of development are issued, they are issued on the premise that the developer is required to meet those conditions in order for titles to be released. The condition may say, we refer to it as seeding the development, so you would seed it with certain number of houses, and that you will maybe release one in every 10 titles, depending on how the infrastructure is put in. But we have seen wherein some developers really do not complete the infrastructure, and in those cases, the titles are withheld. After inspection, the local authorities will determine whether or not the subdivision is suitable for the number of titles that were placed into the condition, if they can be released. And if not, they may enter into some discussion with the developer to vary those conditions depending on the particular situation.
Well, I think what the greater issue that the member raised is that that same developer, after not completing and is happy enough to get only a few of the titles, is given approval to do another subdivision when the first one is not even completed. So what the member is basically saying, why then, if that contractor has, or developer has a track record as such of starting 2 or 3 and not completing them, and then going on to a third one, why is that developer being given the approval to even start another one when he has incompleted and has people's deposit and not being able to pay them, give them the title in some instances?
The point is well taken, Chairman and members. I was just trying to maybe respond a little bit more specifically to Member Witter's comments, but when Member Jackson spoke, yes, I took it that his point was
the same as member,
right,
yeah.
And so it's not lost on us. It's something we will take into consideration. There are, in fact, various guidelines that are set up, such as the Manual for Development, etc. I wouldn't want to go into those kind of details, but what I hear coming out is that we at the ministry really need to maybe relook those standards, yes, and to see how we enforce a little better in relation to the delinquent developers.
Enforce it on the delinquent developers. Because it is those same people that we are trying to protect that are being held at ransom and fleeced.
Chair, the residents are suffering as a result. I have a number of those communities in my constituency, and there is little that I can do to help.
So, Madam PS, that is a serious issue, because it is not just in North Trelawney, but it is island-wide. And we see it, and neither the local authority can give any reprieve to those residents, nor even us as members of parliament. So we are elected to protect them, and if it is that we see that there's a loophole, then we ought to protect the citizens. All right, so something that I'd said to you, Madam PS, to look at to see if it is that it is already on the books and we just need to enforce it. If not, what can we do to help to protect those buyers of in these subdivisions? All right.
So with your permission, you know, I think we want to go beyond just making these observations here. If the PS could indicate to us by when she would raise it internally, of course with her minister, etc., but to give us some feedback in terms of what the ministry is going to do. Having raised it here by the members of parliament, the members of the committee, based upon their own experiences throughout their constituencies, what is it that the ministry, as the oversight entity for all the local authorities, as a policy, what are they going to do, so that we have a sense of whether we're going forward or we're just speaking in the dark?
Some recommendation, at least. All right, Madam Pierce.
Internally, sir, and revert to the committee with
Thank you very much.
Response in a timely manner.
Okay.
Timely, what does that mean? That's relative.
Sir, remember that it's a policy decision that would have to be taken.
Madam Pierce, can you get back to us in January, okay, at least sir, at some, to give us an indication? Loopholes, has discussion started? What are the recommendations, if any, or what is the way forward? Yes. Because I think it's something that we should not let go at this level. Okay. All right. All right, members, thanks to the team, Mr. Wilson, Madam Pierce, and the team. Thank you very much. And if we don't see you back here,
I gather it's your birthday. I heard somebody say that on behalf of the ministry. Happy birthday to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And can I get a gift of 2 roads? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Pierce and team. Thank you very much. And a Merry Christmas to you and your families, if we don't cross paths before then. All right, thank you. All right, members, we are at item 7, any other business? Members, we have a proposed schedule here that would carry us down into December. Our next meeting should have been, or should be, the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. dealing with ongoing efforts and measures to deal with the COVID-19. I think that this one is an important one, especially seeing that there are different programs, especially with the Ministry of Education, having to deal with the tablets that are being offered to students and the face-to-face that they are proposing, that they have started and proposing to add more schools come January. I think that is one that I would ask members if we can tend to that, to those two ministries, right? And then we can, at that next meeting, decide if we do more for the...
Chair, I think we all agreed to the schedule.
Yes, but dates have not been included in them because, one, we have the post-election seminar, hence why we are here on a Thursday. Normally, we would meet on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. On a Wednesday. Huh? Wednesday. On a Wednesday. We normally meet on a Wednesday. It's the PAC that meets on a Tuesday. So the next available date is December 3rd, which is next Thursday. All right, so
Thursdays are very imposing,
No, Thursday is imposing for most of us as rural MPs. That's our constituency days. But we should also be reminded that we are elected here to deal with the people's business here also. I'm happy for you. No wonder I see you sculling Parliament sometimes. But I think that one, though, member, the one with Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education is one that is impatient of deliberation. So I'm asking members that we sign off on next week Thursday for the deliberation with those two. Yes, member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Memory serves me correctly, which it does at this time. I had asked the previous chairman to invite either the local government ministry with extension to certain municipal corporation to ask them certain questions. The Hanover Municipal Corporation, the Westmoreland Municipal Corporation, and the Manchester Municipal Corporation. I noticed that I am not seeing it here any at all. I wonder if that went through the window and if I need to have asked or
Well, remember, this schedule was circulated and comments were asked of each member when the schedule was being circulated.
Yes.
If you had seen it
and
responded when you could have commented.
I seek to ask a question now because it was a minuted matter. And so I would expect to see that information.
I have no problem in having those municipal corporations tend to us. But let us, as this schedule has been accepted, so I would say that once we're done with this schedule, then we can attend upon that request by you, member. As you said, I remember you had asked it inside of. I know.
No, Mr. Chairman, I do not want. Mr. Chairman,
members,
and I ask a protection, sir.
I am trying to protect you.
So you have to direct. You have to direct the argument to my colleague. I ask a question, then, Mr. Chairman, and remember, we are here as earlier. You have said that we are also here to do the people's business.
Yes.
Part and parcel of the situation is that there are matters circulating out there, allegedly. And therefore, we need to bring some transparency to the situation by saying for them to come and explain to the public, that this is what actually happened, because I am in the dark. I'm just hearing by wayside things that are taking place. But Mr. Chairman, the fact is on the table. The fact is on the table, Mr. Chairman. MOCA has gone into the Hanover Municipal Corporation, and it must be a reason why they have. We have had situations wherein persons were brought before the court in Manchester and sentenced And also that we have a municipal building in Westmoreland that had an enormous cost overrun, plus a building what was put on the plan as what is to be executed was not a cut. So I want to hear, and John Public want to hear, why is it and where is it?
Member,
Bring all of them.
as I said to you before, I am sure the members have no problem. I have no problem. Eh?
Only you.
All I'm saying to you is that when this was being circulated...
I agree with you, sir.
Yeah?
I agree
so
with you.
all I'm saying is since we have agreed on this...
Yes.
And we are expecting that at least we're having one more meeting before the Christmas holidays.
Yes.
I am saying to you is that let us have the one deal with ministry, and then come January now,
yes,
we
Mr.
can
Chairman.
relook at the schedule.
I just want
and
you to
am accepting that
authorize.
because I would like to get to the bottom of them too.
And you know how life is, that you as a young person can see things in a brighter light than some of our older folks.
Remember? So members, the next date of the next meeting will be the 3rd of December, and we'll hear from the clerk where that sitting would be when decided. All right, members, move for the adjournment of the meeting. Thank you, members, and have a great weekend.